Hey everybody, wanted to do a end of semester review with you guys. We can go over kind of a snapshot of what we covered through the first part of the year and then your assignment at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. First we started out talking about hardware. What is it? We took apart a laptop and we had the different parts that we passed around and talked about different parts of the computer, what they do, peripherals, motherboards, logic boards, memory, RAM, ROM, hard drives. Had those equations on, how you could measure the different sizes of RAM in your hard drive. We had that mnemonic device. Big Bird kicked my grandmother. To remember the bits and bytes and kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, and that sort of thing. So hopefully get you more comfortable about talking about a computer, like the specs of a computer, and if somebody wanted to go to Best Buy and buy a computer, that they wouldn't be buying something outrageous that they really wouldn't need, to really just understanding what's inside the computer and what it does. Next, that naturally moved over to talking about software and what really runs the computer, what tells the hardware what to do. We talked about operating systems and what operating system your computer runs, whether it's the Mac OS or Windows, or I think we had one Linux user in class. So, and then we talked about the different software packages. So you'd have Microsoft Office, Photoshop, text edit, just the different applications that you have on your computer that you launch, the browsers, and that sort of thing. And that got us to spend a little bit of time talking about the internet. And talked about the history of the internet, how it was created for military use to begin with, for communication. And later on it was shared with the public, and what we use it for today. And the different uses. We talked about something called IoT, or the Internet of Things, and how so many devices now have internet access, whether it's in your home or at the gas pump or riding around in your car. Now you have internet access. So the different uses that you yourself use the internet for, your parents may use it, or it's really become prevalent for people to do all sorts of things over the internet. And that naturally segues into privacy and what information do you share over the internet. Hopefully not much. And we talked about some of the dangers of sharing too much or oversharing on the internet, and just the general safety practices. We could spend a whole day talking about safety and privacy, and I don't want to scare you with all these stories, but we just need to be aware to guard ourselves, as we always should, but especially over the internet, because we have no clue who we're talking to on the other end of the screen there. People can come up with all kinds of things, but we really don't know. So really guard yourself with the privacy and safety there that we talked about. Then we moved over to Office applications. We started out with Google Docs, and we learned a lot of neat keyboard shortcut tricks that I hope you'll carry on and continue using. Copy and paste and cut and undo, one of the most important ones. Control Z or Apple Z, Command Z, whichever computer you have. So we started out talking about those shortcuts, and we signed up for a Google account. And hopefully you guys are pretty comfortable with sharing documents back and forth and giving other people access, and hopefully you'll use that for time to come and collaborating with documents or commenting on other documents. But really talking about Google Docs and word processing programs, typing papers, and what you would use Google Docs for. And we started using Google Sheets, or a spreadsheet application. Really, we had that first application or first assignment where you could create your own spreadsheet there. You followed the long tutorial for the creating a recipe and being able to calculate fields and adding different text in the cell, and many times using Google Sheets for doing calculations that you don't have to manually do, or continue to add things. I use Google Sheets for coming up with budgets, just personal household budgets, because I can easily enter in different calculations and it'll do the math for me, so I won't have to go back and do all those different calculations myself. And then we went to Google Slides, being able to do presentations. And I'm sure you guys will be doing presentations in the future. We looked at some of the basics of using Google Slides, and the first assignment we had was kind of use all the different features. You may not want to get in front of a business crowd and use all these animations and sounds, but we wanted to see that they were there, see kind of what's in your toolbox. And then we also did kind of an informational slide presentation, just so you could see kind of more of an informational presentation. You may not want to put every single thing that you're going to say on the slide and then read off the slide, but just some presentation tips that you may use. And then we looked at some of the other Google services that you guys chose, Google Maps, Google Chrome, and some of the other services that Google offers, some of the other cloud services that are available to you. And then most of you did the hour of code, where you went through the tutorial and it showed you kind of how to piece together some code blocks and you come out with a final product. And you may not have learned a language within an hour, but it kind of got your mind thinking about some of those logic statements that you'll be using when we do start talking about coding and designing next semester. So I've already seen a couple of your projects, but you kind of had the if-then statements. If user clicks this, then this will happen. And you moved your person around, or you moved the letters around if you chose to do the Google logo. And we'll talk a little bit more about hacker/coder. Hacker's got a kind of a negative connotation when you use that word, but you basically were a hacker for that hour. You hacked together some code and you produced a project. So that was a really quick kind of overview of all the different topics that we talked about this past semester. Now, so if you could, for your assignment, I hate to give you an assignment over a break, but I really want to see kind of what you learned this semester. Hopefully you learned something. So I want you to write a one-page paper on what you learned this first semester in class, and topics you may have already known, but you learned more in depth. You learned more things about, you already knew about spreadsheets, but I really learned more about running the calculations, being able to plug in numbers, or maybe something that was totally new, just some new concept that you'd never heard of before, or maybe just you gained some confidence. Before you really didn't want to try too much new on the computer, but now you kind of have a little bit more confidence to be able to figure out things on your own. And I just create it in Google Docs and send me the link to your report when you're done. And I hope you guys had a great semester. Again, I apologize for having to kind of turn this thing around a little bit and doing an online class, but I hope you did learn something this semester, and I hope you guys prayerfully have a great Christmas time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me.